was determined. Proud that the Scottish independence movement is defined by progressive, inclusive internationalism.
Presenting that case, the vision that we have of a prosperous, independent Scotland, a socially just Scotland.
European research grants at risk, collaboration damaged, European academics leaving. The end of free movement and Theresa May's deplorable hostile environment.
We need free movement of people if we're able to have the labour that we would require for our health services, for our tourist industry and so on and so forth. It simply doesn't go far enough. And at the end of the day, the responsibility that we have is to protect the economic interests of the people of Scotland.
Is they've had God knows how many years, especially since the SNP have been in charge, to rectify the so-called ageing population that would have been looming, and they did nothing with it. So all that time they had to incentivise European immigration, never happened. So it does beg the question, why are they so hell-bent on getting control over immigration now? And then it hit me. It absolutely hit me. All in the wake of the Sustainable Development Agenda 2030 BS. They want control over immigration, so when they can't attract European immigration, they can go further afield. So it really was music to my ears to see just a brief bit of sanity in Scotland emerge. A poll reveals a sharp rise in opposition to immigration. So, opposition to immigration is growing in Scotland, with almost half the population believing that it's too high. A YouGov survey for the Times found that 45% of interviewees think that too many people are entering the UK, an increase of 6 percentage points in June last year. I mean, everybody talks about cutting down European immigration. Theresa May's far-right crackdown on EU immigration in the event of leaving the EU. What nobody seems to be talking about is the record levels of non-EU immigration that have been entering the UK for the last 5-6 years especially. Record levels, year on year. Not a peep from Sturgeon, or Theresa May, or Corbyn. None of them. Absolutely none of them. They just pretend it's not happening. This is despite the leadership. The Times has found that 45% of interviewees, I've read that, oh my days. This is despite the leadership of the Scotland's main political parties, particularly the SNP, having liberal attitudes, just far left pandering attitudes towards migration. Helmut Head used a speech to the SNP yesterday to make an impassioned defence of the benefits of immigration and to say that the door was open to anyone who wanted to live and work in Scotland. That's fantastic. I make no apology for taking the opportunity again, blah blah blah. According to the poll of 1,029 people, which was carried out last week, opposition to current levels of immigration has risen by 6% since June last year, while 37% think that levels are about right, compared to 38% and 6% think levels are too low. Granted, we don't have the levels of immigration that England sees, and that's probably why there's a stark contrast in regard to overall attitudes. I'm so sick of hearing the way that Scottish politicians talk about English people in general because of their attitudes towards mass immigration, while they sit there and grandstand about the wonders of migration. They're not really engulfed in it, they get a minuscule fraction in comparison to what England gets year on year, but yet fuck me, I'd love to see them in 10-15 years if they had their way. Would there be any regrets, any remorse, or are they so embroiled in this progressive BS? Who knows? It's risen by 6%, while 37% think that levels are about right, compared with 38% and 6% think levels are too low. The figure was 11% when comparable research was carried out last year. 48% of yes voters in 2014 referendum believe that immigration is too high, as do 77% of Leave voters in the Brexit referendum. I'm not entirely sure where I stand on Scottish immigration, because I'm not entirely sure who is coming in and at what level, what rate, and where from. What I do know is that the SNP have been somewhat sneaky, and they're exploiting the migration laws currently, as they seem to be taking in refugees and migrants from God knows where, all under the guise of some charity work, etc. I was going to make a video on this a few days ago, but I never got around to it. But basically, they've set up a pilot scheme currently, and if it all goes well, they're going to roll it out across the whole country, and it's basically training up people from God knows where, and then when they're trained up, take them over here to fill shortages in the market. Kind of exactly what the UN were planning to do, but Sturgeon's taking it upon herself. She's taking the initiative to do it instead. Do it now instead of waiting a couple of years. And as for the refugees, the 3,000 or so refugees that Scotland took in. Well, they're planning on taking in another 3,000, and they've got the audacity to call them new Scots. This is what I can't stand, the pandering. You know, it's one thing to take in refugees, but it's a whole another ballgame to start pandering to that degree. Anyway, Conservative voters are most likely to be opposed to more immigration, with 65% saying levels are too high. The trend in Scotland is the reverse of what's been happening in the UK as a whole, as research carried out by YouGov last year found that since 2016 the proportion who think that the number of people coming in is too high has fallen by 7 points, from 70% to 63%. Farming leaders have pushed for a post-Brexit immigration system to prioritise as much free movement as possible. Oh, fuck off. Archie Gibson, Executive Director of Seed and Potato Growers, said that they're finding locally trained people is increasingly hard and we depend upon many of our migrant workers. Alright. Figures published by the National Records of Scotland last week show that the country's population had risen to a record level, although the rate of growth is slowing. A record level. Population's on the decline, but it's alright, the migrants will come in to save the day. This is what really irks me. Population grew by 13,000 people to 5.44 million over the year to June 30th last year. Migration was given as the main reason for the increase, with 20,000 more people arriving than leaving. Those were both immigrants from overseas and the rest of the UK. Research commissioned by the Scottish Government found that forcing EU citizens to register for a visa after Brexit could cut net international migration to Scotland by between a third and a half. Oh, research commissioned by the Scottish Government. Get a grip. It's not that difficult to fucking sign up for a visa and pay what's required if they want to stay here that badly. You're just making up more excuses for why you can't attract European citizens. Research commissioned by the Scottish Government found... I've read it. Have I? Aye. The report, written by an independent panel of experts, oh god, the experts, it said the visas would have far-reaching consequences for the economy and for fragile rural communities. Oh well, it's fine, Sturgeon's gonna go further afield, are you not? Scotland's relied on new arrivals for population growth in recent years, and there were concerns that replacing free movement of people for citizens of EU citizens with the UK's proposed system, which includes minimum salary requirements for most work visas, will sharply cut the flow of migrants from the EU. Again, no, I'm so sick of hearing this shit. We didn't get that much European migration to begin with. Can people not understand that there's something not entirely right here with the narrative that Sturgeon and the SNP are conducting here? They want control over immigration in order to allow what's apparently going on just now to continue. But what's going on just now isn't quote-unquote sustainable. We're not attracting enough European immigration as it is. So what are they going to do then? Well, when they've got control over immigration, they're going to go further afield. And as I've said in a few videos prior to this, and I'll say it again quickly, when your population is supposedly on a decline, and you can't be fucked to try and incentivise native birth, can't do that when you're all about empowering women and feminising boys, white boys. Oh no. You have to be very careful who you start to let in. And I have a very funny feeling that that is no skin of Helmet Head's nose, or the SNP in general, because they are so obsessed with the Agenda 2030, sustainable developments, and there's constant talk of climate change. They've really taken the initiative, haven't they, in regards to that? And I just can't help but wonder to myself if they are leading us down the garden path to a possible detrimental future. If people don't wake the fuck up. I'm glad to see a poll like this, but nonetheless, it's still concerning. The report assumed no major change in net immigration from countries outside the EU. Is that so? I'll leave on this note, this pretentious dickhead. No, actually, no, I need to quickly touch upon this briefly. Nicola Sturgeon launched his biggest campaign in the economics of independence in SNP's history. That's great, fantastic, whoopie-doo. Right, but when you come down here, they just can't help themselves. Sturgeon has also announced plans for a Social Justice and Fairness Commission, established on similar lines to the Sustainable Growth Commission. Within that one sentence alone, it reeks to high heaven of God knows what. The dark corners of the far left. UN's fucking dream. Similar lines to the Sustainable Growth Commission, with the aim of examining how an independent Scotland could reduce poverty and drive employment. Oh well, forced quota systems, probably equality of outcome potentially. And with members yesterday backing for plans to introduce a new Scottish currency as practicable after an independence vote, Helmet Head told delegates the conversation we have had within our party is one we must now have with the country. Yesterday, in endorsing our new economic plan, we took a big step, and in the process we demonstrated with a vibrant, engaged Democratic Party. We are a Democratic Party, fuck's sake. Jesus. And she's declared that we have a climate emergency. And of course, the only thing that's holding them back from revamping our society into the shithole utopia that they really want to do, or they really want to turn it into, the only thing that's holding them back is the fact that we are still part of the UK. Must be driving them somewhat insane. But again, now they're starting to hijack the independence movement in order to push their fucking sustainable development BS. You know, that's almost as bad as hijacking the independence movement in order to shove us back into the European Union as far as I'm concerned, but hey-ho.
Million Scots voted for Brexit.
They did, but what I'm trying to say here very carefully is the politics of the debate is different. If you ask people, do you think the European Union is great? Quite a lot of Scots will say, well, no, we don't. It's not a brilliant institution. But it hasn't been a driving factor in Scottish politics. There are no anti-immigration parties that get any votes in Scotland. There are no xenophobic parties generally which get any votes in Scotland. Now, what I think is really important here is not what's happening at this very second, but what's happening underneath. I think in 2014, the independence debate became about the directions of two countries. Scotland becoming a bit more Nordic, more progressive, less centralised, all these kind of things. And Britain continuing to be this country which has been drifting to the right. And I think Brexit is a symptom of that. And one of the things which I think is really important is this strange idea that if somehow we just cancelled...
He's a pretentious dick.
...Brexit, that politics would disappear.
Tell you one thing that would disappear. The mandate.